Hey guys, so today I'm going to be making a track from scratch. I'm doing this video with the assumption that you've made it through the first tier of Torch's curriculum material. So, I'm talking about, the browser, the channel rack, the mixer, how to arrange in the playlist, how to do automations, how to kind of organize your patterns, that kind of stuff. So, chord building, of course, chord building and, building rhythms. This video is kind of a compilation of all of that stuff. I am making this track from scratch in FL, but I'd be lying to you if I didn't say that I didn't have a general plan for what I'm going to be doing here. But this is all stuff that, we've covered. Basically, I wrote out some chord patterns. I got 1-4, 1-4, 1-4, 3-7. I got 1-4, 6. And then 7-1. So basically, these are all chord charts and just sounds that I like. That's all this is here, but I'm going to be using this as a guide to kind of guide me through it. And that's really important to, kind of organize yourself before you try and tackle some of this stuff. So that's what we're going to be doing today. I'm going to be working on a track from scratch, and hopefully that'll give you an idea if you're finding yourself with ideas and you don't know where to take them, you don't know what to do with them. Hopefully this will maybe answer some of those questions. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start with, let's see, actually I'm going to go into this pack because actually that's where I was going. I want to find this, actually. Yeah, I like that one. So for now, I'm just kind of sound shopping a little bit. I just want to find some things that are going to work for the beat that I have in my head. So let's see. Some of these snares are pretty good. I don't want anything too flashy because actually that's good. Because the beat I have in my head is kind of like an ambient, chill sort of beat. So that's really what I'm going for here. Now, again, I'm not going to be doing anything crazy because I want this to reflect, what we've already learned in the lessons. So I'm not going to go crazy and do all this crazy stuff that, I'm not going to be doing any sound design today. I'm actually just going to be using, I'm going to be using a lot of Nexus samples, which is a synthesizer that I have, that I think typically works well for the kind of stuff that I have in mind today. Yeah, that should be about right. I want to get rid of that tail on the snare a little bit. So I'm going to pop open a volume envelope and there we go. I'm going to do a little bit of reverb on the snare. That should work for now. Okay. So I also want to find let's see, I'm going to make a separate pattern for this, but I want find a hi-hat. That should be good. So now I'm going to click on the plus here to open up a new pattern, and I want this hi-hat to be on the offbeats. Boom, 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 boom. So pattern 1 is going to sound like this. And pattern 2 is going to layer on top of that, and it's going to sound like this all together. Right? Pretty simple, pretty easy. So I'm going to get rid of this for a minute. Now I'm going to click on the little plus here, and I'm going to open up an instance of Nexus. So I think the first thing I want to do is I'm going to find like a nice piano sound. It's actually pretty close to what I wanted. So now I'm gonna go over to my chord chart. So a little bit of what I have planned out here. I'm actually writing in 2 keys. There's going to be a key change in one part, and I'll explain why I did that. So I'm just going to start with so I'm starting in B minor. Oh, I don't know why that volume is so low. So starting with a. So now I actually want this to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 10, right there. Now I'm going to go to a 4 chord, but I want there to be that little change in rhythm there. So I'll show you what I mean. I want to hear that note on top. So I'm actually going to take it out from down here. Another thing I want to mention is I'm also not going to edit this video because I want to make sure that you can see the whole process. Even if I make mistakes or I do things wrong, I want you to just, understand that that's all right, and it happens and it's not going to be perfect all the time. So in this first chord progression I have 1, 4, 1, 4, 1, 4, 3, 7, right? So I'm going to copy Control C and paste Control V because I know I'm going 1, 4. I can do it again. 1, 4. I can do it again. Paste again. And then the last one is going to be 3, 7. So I am going to paste here just to get the notes here, but now I'm going to move them. So there's my 3. And then a 7. All right, so the full chord progression is going to sound like this. Okay, so let's drop that in. So now maybe we can start to look at how we want to start structuring this, right? So let's move this down a little bit to give us some room for the drums. So we have our pattern 1 is the drums, and then pattern 2 is that hi-hat. Now I might not want to add that hi-hat in right away. Let's also assign this to channel 10 in our mixer, so we keep everything on our mixer. Now what I'm doing is I put it on 10 because I kind of want to leave some room down here to keep all my drums down here and all my instruments up here, right? So I'll give myself a little bit of room. So I'm going to put that on 10. I don't like to put anything on insert 1 because that's usually what I record on. Just a little fun fact. So I usually start on 2 with the kick and 3 in the snare. So. Now I kind of want to hear a little bit more beefiness out of this snare. I'll dial back the reverb just a little bit. A little bit of beefiness and maybe a little more high mids and a little less weight, way up there. Something like that, right? So now what I want to do is, I changed my mind because I'm going to do another repetition here. So I'm going to start my kick and my snare right here. And then pattern 2, I'll start halfway through that, right? So this way we have that intro, right? And now when I'm doing something like this, I also think if I was going to give this to a singer or an artist to use as a song, they're probably going to be singing over this too. So I don't want to put too much stuff to the point where it's crowding everything that's going on, right? So that's why I'm kind of leaving a little bit of room here. You notice I do mix a little bit as I go, you know. If I notice something is a little loud, I'll kind of do it on the fly. So now I want to start to build some layers in here, right? So let's open up another Nexus. I'm gonna find another sound. I remember this one being kind of cool. So what I'm actually gonna do here is I'm going to copy this entire chord progression. So I'd use Control A to select the whole thing, Control C to copy it, right? Open up a new pattern, set this to say 11, go to our piano roll and paste it in. So this is this pattern. I can already tell that's gonna be kind of loud, so I'm gonna go and turn it down. Cool. So now I can put this in the whole thing, but then it's gonna play throughout this whole section, and there's not really gonna be that much, you know, dynamic between the piano and this thing that I just added, right? So let's create some dynamic. One thing we can do is automate the cutoff frequency on this filter, which is something that I do a lot, and a lot of electronic artists use this technique all the time. So I'm going to move the cutoff frequency so it registers on the link up here. I'm going to right click it. You can see F mod cut. That's the cutoff frequency, and I'm going to create an automation clip, right? So now this point at about 50% is what it sounds like when the synth is full, you know? So what I want to do is I'm going to create a point right in the middle here. And I actually don't really want much of this synth in the very beginning parts, right? Because I want to just open up with just the piano right here. And then right when the drums come in, this synth is going to start to open up because this cutoff frequency is going to move up. And I'll show you what that's going to sound like. I also am already hearing that I might want to add a little bit of compression to this kick because I feel like it's a little flat sounding. And adding compression, even though this is not something that we've covered in the first tier of the Torches curriculum, that's okay. I'm gonna do it, and it's something that will be covered in probably in the next section that you're going into. So what this does is it's going to add a little bit of punch. See, that's with it off. This is with it on. Just adds a little bit of punch. So now we have about 30 seconds of a song, right? Now I want to move into, actually, you know what? Let's decorate this a tiny bit more, right? Open up another Nexus. This time I want kind of like a beepy, kind of like a chill, beepy kind of sound. Now let's just start trying stuff. That's not bad. It's a little bright. And I actually have, I kind of have an idea of what I want to hear. Like, bam, 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 bam. So if I count this, bam, bam, those are both on the offbeat, right? So, bam, bam, Now that's on the E and the A of this. So if I listen to this with the metronome on, oh, I am writing in the wrong. There we go. I was making that twice as long as it, actually I think more than twice as long as it was supposed to be. So this is kind of what I was hearing in my head. Just a very quick, see, it's already holding out for too long. Something like that. Let's try, they're all drums. That's actually kind of cool, I like that. Let's see what that sounds like if we drop that in. So that's pretty cool. I like that. That can actually stay as is. And it was at a pretty good volume. I was thinking maybe adding a little bit of, just a little bit of reverb to kind of widen it out a little bit. Now for this, I'm also hearing some of these bass frequencies that I don't necessarily want. And this is something, again, that we haven't gone over yet, but this is something to look forward to in the next section. And I'm just gonna cut out some of these frequencies that I don't really think are necessary. I can see the fundamentals of the note sitting right in here. So everything below that isn't really adding much. And I can already hear that that's cleared up a little bit of the low end issue, right? That's a mixing technique that, you know, can help you make much cleaner mixes. So now what I'm gonna do is I am going to move on to the next section, which this is where a key change is gonna happen. So I'm just gonna go to the next part. I'm actually gonna take a quick look at, so I start in the 5, move up into the 6 register. Okay, so I wanna generally stay in the same register as far as octave goes to kind of keep it glued together. So now I am moving into the key of A minor. And I'm going 1, 4, 6, 7, 1, 6. 1. Now again, normally, you know, we can, you know, when we're building chords, you can kind of stay within the bar. But what I want to do actually is I want the chords to come a little bit before the beat. So it'd be like, bang, bang. That's hard to do, and yeah, I'm not. My beatboxing skills are very, very, very subpar. So now I need a 6 chord. Now rather than filling this 4th bar, I actually just want this to ring out through that. Now basically what I just did here, how I was skipping around a little bit, is I was using some inversions, specifically this chord, just to kind of like I have an A in the bass, right? Which would be a 2nd inversion 4 chord. Now what that does is it just allows me to keep these chords a little close, these notes a little closer together within the chord. Because if I jump up to this 4 chord, you can see how there's a ton of movement in this bass line. Whereas if I use this A here, I can kind of keep it in generally the same area. And that's just kind of glue it together a little bit, like. You know, but that's actually what I want to hear. So I'm gonna move the D and the C up. So I should play with the metronome. Good, that's exactly what I want. So now, again, the rhythm of the next bar is going to be the same. So, but the chords are going to be different. Actually, now that I'm looking at it, only, well, two of the chords are different. This last chord here is going to stay the same. So I only have to edit these first two. So I need to change these to a 7 and a 1 chord. Luckily, I actually had this first chord as a 1 chord, but now it's going in the second spot. So I could just use that first one as a reference and just match those notes here. And then the second chord is going to be a 7 chord. So that should be correct. So now let's listen to it all the way through. So now I decided, you saw me delete that note, right? I decided as I was hearing this, I was actually listening to this top melody, and I wanted to hear this melody. Ba, ba, ba. That's what I wanted to hear in my head. So even though this C would be perfectly fine there, I actually wanted to remove this C to put more emphasis on that A, which sounded a little better to me. So I did it on the fly as it was happening. So let's drop this in. I'm going to do the same thing that we did before. I'm going to copy this whole thing, and I'm going to make the exact same thing, but with this synthesizer, right? No, darn. So. All right, so now I'm beginning a new chord progression, right? This will probably be a different section of the song. I'm going to leave this cutoff frequency where it is because I want this to be fully opened up at this point, right? And I'm probably going to repeat this a couple times, right? This, what we made before with this guy, is not going to work anymore because now we're in a different key. So if you listen to that, doesn't really work anymore, right? So we're gonna make something new. Let's go open up another Nexus, and I want something. Let's try. That's pretty close, actually. Oh, I like the bit crush on that. So now this melody I sort of already had in my head when I was making this chord progression. When I was thinking about what was going to work here, I kind of already had a good idea of what I wanted to hear. So I'm actually just going to start drawing that out. Oh, I keep doing that. Get out of here. So now again, coming up with melodies is a lot less mathematical than it is to come up with chords. So this is the kind of thing that you have to, when I'm trying to come up with a melody for something, I find myself just humming a bunch of different things in my head, just kind of humming along to it, just kind of making little phrases, singing little phrases and stuff, and waiting until something comes up that's going to work. Like when I had this chord progression in my head, that's exactly what I was doing. I was doing like a bam 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 boom boom bam 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 bam. And I'm not a singer, so bear with my my vocals there. But you can see how now that I have that idea in my head, I can start translating it to something that's going to sound better than my own voice, right? Okay, so this is about what I had in my head when I was doing this. So. Or better yet, let's listen to it over the chord progression, right? Let's do it. So now, I like the fact that this doesn't have drums in it because I'm going to use this to build it back up, right? Or a vocalist might actually have fun with that too. And just how I built it up here, we're in a new section now. So I might kind of do the same exact strategy, and that's going to kind of keep things dynamic, right? So if we're coming out of this section, didn't want to hear that yet. So what I do want to do is I want to create a fill right here. So what I did was I took my pattern 1 and I pasted it. Actually, I'll do it again because I did it really fast. I wasn't thinking. So I'm going to select my pattern 1 and I'm going to drop it right before here. I'm going to make unique, and then I'm going to go in and edit this. So may I have it? So it sounds pretty basic by itself, but in the song, it might add a little bit of a lead in to the drums coming back. So it didn't sound quite so abrupt, right? So now, what I'd like to do is I start to have a little bit of structure here. I want to talk a little bit about why this key change, why I chose this key change, right? Because when I hear this progression here, right? Specifically this part, I thought it would be an interesting switch to, instead of going down to our root, I kind of wanted to hear a chromatic thing there. So that's really what I want to emphasize. I really want to emphasize this D to C sharp to C, right? So I want to make the listener think that I totally did that on purpose, you know, because I sort of did. So what I kind of want to do is create a little transitional piece right there, you know, so I'm going to make a new pattern. Now, again, I'm going to do so there's going to be a minimal amount of sound design in here because I'm definitely not going to use that stock sound, right? Okay, so I also want to, actually, I'm going to bring that all the way down and I'm going to use this slide to gradually bring in this volume a little bit. And that did not work like I wanted it to work at all. So that volume is going to be all the way down. This one's going to start to come in until I get around here, and then it's going to start to talking and keeping my focus on this is really hard for me to do. I'm not the best multitasker in the world. So again, I'm going to bring that all the way down. So this is kind of the form that we're getting. I kind of want this to fade in. I'm going to use the slider to fade this note in. Then it's going to kind of slowly slide down to that note. Then it's going to slide down to, this is the important one right here. This is that C, because that's that chromatic motion that I wanted. So that's really what I'm trying to emphasize, is this motion right here. And then I'm going to continue, you know, the, oh, actually, no, I want that to slide up relatively fast. And then I'm going to put another one to fade it out. Right, so this is kind of what it's going to sound like if I did that right. Sounds really basic right now, right? So let's try and do something a little more interesting to it. I'm not going to use a third oscillator. I could probably do it with two. So first thing I want to do is I'm going to open up an LFO. I'm going to do a very high speed, oh, not on the volume, on the pitch. I'm going to do a very, or low speed rather, is what I meant to say. Right? So that's just a basic idea of what I wanted. Now I'm going to throw a little reverb on there. So that's cool. It's kind of what I want. What I really want to hear is a little distortion on it too, to dirty it up a little bit. So I'm going to open up the Blood Overdrive, and I'm going to turn up the preamp, and I'm going to turn down the post gain. So basically I'm distorting it, and then I'm turning the volume back down. So. Now that pitch sounds like it's going a little crazy. Sounds a little sharp to me. You know what, let's actually just drop it in the song and see how it sounds. So that should go right about there when we're transitioning from this part to this part, right? I don't like it. It sounds a lot sharper than I want it to. Let's try, which is interesting because I really don't feel like I have that much going on here. was I think a little closer. Okay, well, you know, for now, you know, it's not exactly what I wanted, but the point in doing that was I want to make sure that people understand that I want to put emphasis on that, you know, on that chromatic pattern coming down, because I want that to be kind of the emphasis of why that key change exists, you know. So that's kind of why I'm doing that. And, you know, I didn't execute it the best that I wanted to. I just wanted to do a very, very, very basic sound that was kind of masked behind some reverb, you know. And it doesn't really sound like I want it to, but, you know, with a little bit of work, I'm sure it would be a little better. You know, let's try. I mean, pitch-wise, it is sort of accomplishing what I wanted to accomplish, but it's just I'm not a huge fan of the sound itself. It's... Ooh, at a lower pitch, that's way better. That's much better. I could live with that. Okay, so you can kind of see what I'm going for there. I'm trying to put an emphasis on that chromatic phrase downwards so that people really catch on to why that key change is there. You know, so now what I would like to do is... This part is still sounding a little bit empty, so what I would actually like is I'd really like to hear like kind of a pluck bass in there. You know, one thing that I actually have used before is this as a bass. And it sounds really cool. So basically what I'm gonna do is, now I can't just drop these chords in there, right? With a bass that's, make sure that's a free pattern. With a bass like this, it's going to be important that we actually have some movement in there, because if I just outline the chords, you know, the decay of the synth itself is so short that it's only going to last a fraction of a second and then it's going to go away. So what I actually want to do is I'm actually going to put a little bit of motion on it by just doing like a syncopated rhythm. I actually don't want delay on here either. I'm debating whether or not I even want reverb on here, because typically for like a bass line, that's not really ideal. But so, you know. So again, I'm going to copy this just so I don't have to draw in the entire rhythm again, right? And then it went A, then we went 7 chord. Boom, 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 boom. Again, sorry for the vocals. This is what I do. Boom, 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 boom. Actually, I could probably keep boom, 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 ba bam. So yes, yeah, something like that, right? Let's actually move this guy down because that's not as important as the bass line. I'll drop that in. Let's see where we're at. Again, I'm going to try and give this a tiny, tiny bit of punch, just with a little tiny, tiny bit of compression. Now I want to actually shorten this because I want it to more of a stop, like, yeah, it's a little better. All right, so let's see where it goes. It's not bad, actually. That's pretty cool. I'm digging it. It's nice. So now you can see, actually, one thing I want to do before we move forward with, you know, a little bit, tiny bit more decorating before I end this video is, so now we have a key change going from B minor to A minor. But if you notice, if I let this end and then loop back to B minor, that's not the prettiest transition. Actually, F to B minor is a tritone, which isn't the prettiest interval in the music world, you know. So what I want to try and do is I want to try and make a bit of a smoother transition back to this part here. We're moving from the key of B minor to A minor, you know, it's only one note away. So actually the thing that pops into my head is the 6-7-1 progression. You know, is the 6th chord and the 7th chord are both major chords and they're moving in whole steps. So that might be an easy way for us to kind of pull this together. So what I want to do is I'm going to start a new pattern and I'm going to go, so in the key of A minor, if I went 7, I just want to do like a 1 bar transition, or not even a bar. I think like a half of a bar transitional piece. No. Oh, I lied. I wanted to go F. So in the key of A, no, or did I want to do that? I honestly forget what I wanted to do now. First of all, let's make that longer. Let's try this. If I go because I'm thinking G major would be the 7 chord in A, and the 6 chord in B. G major would be the same. So I kind of want to try and end on a common ground to try and get us back to that first key, right? That's my thinking there. So I'm just going to make this one pattern just because it's a transitional piece, you know. And then let's just, let's just copy and paste from here. And here's the deal, and I've said this in my videos before, right? Copying and pasting can be a little bit lazy, but the thing is, it makes structuring your song way easier because look, that's all structured, and I just threw it right back in there. I want to go one more over though, so the transitional piece has some room. Copying and pasting is really easy, and the thing is, we can always go back and decorate this second half much differently than we did the first half, you know? So even though we copied and pasted it, it doesn't mean that we have to get lazy with the whole production itself. You know, we can go back in there and make it kind of cool. So now what I'm doing here is I want to automate that synthesizer back down and then bring it back up before we go into that kind of hook piece again, right? So let's see how that transition actually works. It's not super smooth, but it's way better than going from the F to the B. A G to a B is a much better option, right? Like I noticed that was much less dissonant. So, and I'm sure it would be a little better even if I do something like this and kind of transition the drums with it. Or actually, while we're at it, let's see if we can, excuse me. Let's see if we can actually pull a piece out of this melody and drop that in there too. So that'll make it pretty, hopefully, ideally, that would make it pretty seamless. You know, I'll make unique. So we have our own little pattern to work with here. And I'm just going to use my ear for this because I don't really have a specific place I'm trying to go. I might actually just drop that last note, kind of leave it up to the listener to hear what they want. And that actually transitioned really nicely because if you notice, and I didn't even do this on purpose, but this note, this starts on a D. And our melody in this part, actually, that also ends on a D. So that transition's kind of cool. So that's kind of neat. So the last thing I want to do here, right, before I call this, there's a lot of things that we still haven't done. There's things like adding effects, like, you know, putting reverb on drums and kind of letting them like splashes and crash sounds and stuff like that to kind of add to the, you know, immersion of the track itself. But one big thing that I haven't done yet that might really benefit this track is adding a little bit of a ducking effect or like a side chain. So if you haven't seen the video on how to do that, I'm going to do it right now if you want to pay attention. So basically what you want to do is you want to find a drum with a very, you know, quick decay, like the drum, very quick. Hi-hats work great. So we're going to make a new pattern, and I'm just going to put this on the 1, the 2, the 3, and the 4. And we're going to assign this to something that hasn't been used yet, which I think 7 would be a safe bet. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the Fruity Peak controller. There are multiple ways to do this, but this is personally just the easiest one for me. If I play just this pattern, you can see what's happening here. The peak controller is actually reading the, it's not really what I want to do. I just want a little more decay. There we go. That looks good. The peak controller is reading the input of this hi-hat, right? Now, why is this important? Because if we take all of these instruments that we just made, right? First of all, the sidechain pattern we want to have on when the drums are going, right? So here's our drum pattern right here. We're gonna start it at 25, drag it all the way over to 41, about, right? All the way through here, yeah. And it's gonna drop out right there. We'll put it at, that's a fill. And we'll start it right there, roughly, okay. But what this does is when we have an instrument, I actually want to mute it. I want to mute that because we don't actually want to hear it. We're just using it for its volume, right? So we take some of these instruments and I'm going to send them. Now there's multiple ways you could do this. You could put, you can put a volume on each one individually, or you could just send them all to the same place. For example, if I put them all on, say 16, I'm going to not send them to the master and send it to 16, right? Same thing, not send to master, send to 16. Now, what haven't we heard from yet? Not gonna send to master, send to 16. And where's the bass? Don't send to master, send to 16. So now we can mute 16 just to make sure we got everything. I'm not really too worried about whether or not that gets sidechained. So good, we have everything sending to 16. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm going to open up a balance. Now the only reason why I like the balance is because it's just so simple. There's just a volume and a pan. You know, that's it. Oh, I shouldn't have touched that. And that's really all we need. We just need this volume, right? So we're gonna right click it and we're gonna hit link to controller. Now that peak controller that we just put on that hi-hat, we're going to select it from this menu. We're going to go to the peak and we're going to type in 0.8 minus input. And you're going to see how that writes that. Now, why 0.8 minus input? Because you see this volume. If all the way left is 0 and all the way right is 1, this is currently opening up, you know, default at 0.8. That's that value right there. And then we want to subtract the input of the hi-hat. So when the hi-hat adds volume, we want to actually be scooping that out, you know? So that's what we're trying to accomplish here. Now, if we play this track, you'll see now that's a little bit of a steep, that's kind of a steep sidechain. But what this accomplishes is a lot of dance music uses this because it allows you to accomplish higher volumes with the instruments. And then when the drums are sounding off, they're going to duck under the drums. So you're going to get a clearer mix out of your drums and everything. It's going to kind of glue everything together. You're going to get a louder, you know, clearer signal from your drums because things are ducking when the drums hit. And then they're kind of fading in. So it creates this kind of like pump effect. Actually, this is kind of like at a volume that's a little lower than I want it to be. I might actually try doing this in octaves. Did that just do anything? No. There we go. So let's line this up. Boom. But I actually don't want the higher octave to be too loud. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll put a higher octave, but then I'll just kill the volume, you know, down there. So. Try different reverb. there you have it. That is, a basic track that I made from scratch, and you can kind of see the, the workflow of the whole thing. Unfortunately, this video was kind of long. I think it's about an hour now, but 1 hour isn't a super long time to put together a track that I just kind of had an idea of what I wanted in my head, but it wasn't really, fleshed out too much yet. And this sounds pretty cool. We have a little over 2 minutes of music, but plus a bridge or, maybe an extension on the verses, depending on what a vocalist might want to do with it. And basically you have yourself a fully made track here, and you saw how I used the mixer and, choosing stuff from the browser, how I was organizing things in the playlist and making beats in the channel rack, all that good stuff, how, the automation for that one cutoff frequency. So you can see how all of the stuff that you're learning actually, comes together as one, workflow, one process that brings you to a product, So I really hope you enjoyed watching this, and I hope you learned a little something from it, and I hope you go out and start making your own tracks and your own songs for us to hear and enjoy.